Please stand by. Your call will begin in 15 seconds. Well, good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy day to join us on our call. Brought to you by Supply Chain Insights, Race for Supply Chain 2020. My name is Jeff, and I'll be your host for today's event, which means I'll be in the background answering any general or technical questions from any of you that do need assistance. Please place those questions down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen where you see Q&A. We're also going to address all questions that come into that area about today's presentation. So if you have any questions to our presenters, please place them there as well. This event is being recorded, and without further ado, it's my extreme privilege to turn the call over to Constance Corll. Constance, the call is yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and welcome to Race for Supply Chain 2020, part of our monthly webinar series. I am your host, Constance Corll, Director of Marketing for Supply Chain Insights. Today's webinar Twitter hashtag is #SCIWebinar, so please feel free to share your questions and thoughts in the social networks. In the next hour, you will hear from Lora Cecere, founder of Supply Chain Insights, as well as our very special guest, Fran O'Sullivan, General Manager, Integrated Supply Chain at IBM, and Neil Stout, Vice President of Category Supply Chain, Colgate-Palmolive, as they present their vision for Supply Chain 2020. For those of you who have read Laura's new book, Bricks Matter, this topic is the last chapter in the book, and it has become a favorite to many. We want to hear from you. So please go ahead and ask questions and add comments throughout the webinar. We will get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Lora Cecere.
Thank you very much, Constance. The Race for Supply Chain 2020. Companies are trying to look forward, but they're not clear what that's going to look like. When we think about supply chain management, we're 30 years of history. So it was first used in 1982 to represent source, make, deliver together in supply chain. So 30 years passed in 2012. But now we're starting to look forward, and we're trying to say, what does the future look like? And what does that mean? And how do we go forward and really be able to drive the future? Today, I feel very, very fortunate to be joined by Fran O'Sullivan from IBM, who's going to give insights around IBM's future direction, and Neil Stout from Colgate-Palmolive. I picked IBM because of the insights and innovation of both analytics and talent development and the great work they've done in building forward-looking processes. IBM has been over the years, and a real supply chain leader. And for those of you who have been reading my blog, you know that I've been very impressed with Colgate's performance around operating margin, return on assets, and their ability to really power on the effective frontier to be able to not only improve costs, but also improve cycles. And so I'm excited today to have Colgate join us to be able to talk about their work and what this looks like. In fact, when I was interviewing Colgate, they said one of the things they did when they looked at 2020 was they imagined that they were on a beach and they weren't here anymore, that they were off living a good life, and they were passing the supply chain on to the next generation of pioneers. And I think that's right. And, as we think about the supply chain of the future, what we've got is growth and global economies, but we've really got talent that's coming primarily from North America and Europe. And so as we look at the supply chain of 2020, we are seeing that mid-management talent is an emerging issue. And the good news is for supply chain leaders that there's greater opportunity within their current organization. But we have a couple of things happening along with that. We've got retirement of baby boomers. We've got more opportunity in these global economies because the schools are not able to bring enough talent into these markets to meet the needs. And the third thing is that as the supply chain teams grow and coalesce, we have a lot more horizontal movement and the building of what Fran calls the T-shaped manager, which helps us to really start building horizontal processes that span the vertical silos and move outside in. So this evolution of supply chain, in the book Bricks Matter, when I asked the supply chain pioneers, which we interviewed 75 supply chain pioneers to write the book Bricks Matter, and we asked the pioneers what they saw were the tipping points. And today we're going to hear from Colgate and IBM. But the first tipping point that the pioneers really felt was we're going to be having a real inflection point in the building of supply chain talent. So what we see is that it may be the missing link for the supply chain. In fact, when I started writing the book Bricks Matter, the average time to get a planner was 3 months, and what we're seeing right now is the average time to get a planner is about 9 months. And so companies can no longer swap planners. There's a need to really build talent internally. The other thing that the pioneers talked about was the safe and secure supply chain. So, the pharmaceutical companies spoke about the need to have random tagging of eaches and to be able to track that through the supply chain. The consumer products companies talked about the movement to cold chains and how they were having to change for those processes. And the food and beverage companies spoke about the evolution of food compliance and what that meant. And the high-tech companies were looking at what they were doing around sustainability and Congo metals and the REACH programs. And so each industry has a different kind of compliance thrust, but they all take on the nature of changing the supply chain in terms of data and process. And then we get into this whole realm of analytics. And unfortunately, much of the data that we have that are coming to the doorstep of the organization doesn't fit into the techniques and analytics that we invested in over the last 3 decades. There's not a good place to put unstructured data or social data, or to be able to put the Internet of Things, which is machine-to-machine interface, as we become far more digital in the movement of outside in. And as we get end-to-end orchestration, which Neil's going to talk about a little bit more, one of the issues around the rising commodity prices and the need for us to build these horizontal processes that orchestrate, it causes us to really think about new forms of analytics. And so Fran's going to talk about some of the work that they're doing at IBM around new forms of prediction and analytics. Which gets us to big data supply chains. And I was at a conference this week and I was asked about the big data problem. And I don't see it as a big data problem. I see it as a big data opportunity as we really think about using new forms of data and new forms of analytics. But we're just starting in the analytics world to really be able to frame this outside in, and then learning supply chains, and then the redefinition of manufacturing. So in process organizations, digital manufacturing is really driven by the Internet of Things with pumps and motors and conveyors actually speaking to software and being able to do predictive analytics. In the digital world and discrete, it's driven heavily around 3D printing and some of the evolution that we see there. So as we look forward, we've got to manage talent, we've got to think differently about analytics, and we've got to think differently about how we manage the end-to-end value chain. Unfortunately, many companies that are on the call have either defined supply chain as a department or defined supply chain as a set of technologies, and so this end-to-end approach is often a challenge for companies. We've actually found that less than 1% of companies have anyone that is managing end-to-end. And this concept of managing from the customer's customers to the supplier's supplier is something that we only see that's happening with leaders. So the current state of supply chain, when we ask people their individual pain, the ability to get data, resonates very highly. And also the knowledge and understanding of the supply chain around the executive team. It's growing in importance, And companies are a little frustrated. They've not been able to get the returns that they had hoped for. But what they would like to do is they would like to say, how can they move forward for 2020, and how can they really evolve? And so one of the things that I tell people is, I don't think we have best practices. I think instead we have evolving practices. And as we think about the last decade, I think we've got to put our shoulders back and say that the only thing we've really done is improved employee productivity. If you look at inventory and reducing inventory, only the high-tech industry reduced inventory. If we look at costs and the management of costs against rising complexity, again, only the high-tech industry has really been able to meet that challenge. And so what I'd like to do today is really turn this over to allow us to understand what's happening in the supply chain with IBM and how they're seeing the future. So with that, Fran, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over and talk a little bit about the evolution at IBM and what you're seeing and your vision for 2020.
Great. Thank you, Laura. You know, I'm personally just so excited and delighted to be here because I really think sitting in the beginning of 2013, we have to have the right strategies and talent development plans in place to be ready for 2020. So what I thought I'd do is just start off and kind of put it in context a little bit of where we are within IBM in our transformation and then set the stage for 2020. So if we could go to the first page. If you look at kind of the early 2000s, I think IBM, like perhaps many of the companies that have had a little bit of a longer history, we had a very, it was called multinational or siloed structure, but we had each of our divisions had its own manufacturing plant, its own manufacturing IT systems. Every country did their own procurement. Every country did their own cash collection. So we did a lot of work in the early 2000s on horizontally integrating, driving that efficiency. We were able to drive a lot of cost out. We now have one procurement organization across all of IBM, a manufacturing execution team, and all of our accounts receivable. So everything has been horizontally integrated. And again, that drove a lot of efficiencies. But if we could go ahead and go to the next slide, I think where really the excitement comes is now that we're able to become, go on our journey to be this smarter supply chain. And that's really taking, you know, manufacturing, supply chains are so data rich. How do we get that and put it to use so we can drive business outcome? And I'll give you some examples in a minute here. But really, it's taking the analytics, and you start off with getting your reporting, your dashboards, if you will, be descriptive analytics. Move on to be predictive. You can start modeling and optimizing. And then if you're really looking end-to-end, you can start to get prescriptive and truly drive bottom-line performance. Within IBM, our supply chain now starts with sales support in the front office, so all the way from quote creation down to order scheduling, shipping, invoices, and accounts receivable. So we have this end-to-end system. Being able to apply the smarter analytics to that end-to-end has really helped drive efficiencies. If we could go to the next page, and so we talked about the 2020. And what we did is we brought a team of people together. We brought some very young in their career, top talent. We brought some more seasoned supply chain members. We brought in some universities. And we put them in a room, and we call this our future lady. And it's still evolving. In fact, I'd love feedback at the end. But, you know, just the fact that it isn't a supply chain with, you know, little factories for your suppliers in your factory and then a truck and, you know, delivering it to your client as a line. we really did it as a globe, if you will, and how is it all interconnected as you go forward. And a big piece of our 2020 vision is this transparent supply chain. And what does that really mean? Well, if you extend outside of your ERP is no longer within your walls. You have to have multi-enterprise, so your suppliers and their suppliers, or in the upper left you can see your business partners, your clients. And if you're transparent, then we're going to have communities set up where anybody in that community, so your client, can go in and say, well, here is this order I placed, or here is the invoice. This is when my part is starting down the factory line, or I'm getting my subcontractor labor services in place. It's all very transparent and highly collaborative. And then if you look and being able to apply then the advanced analytics to that, really again to drive business outcome, and I'll give you 4 examples of that in a minute. And then the bottom right, I think that predictive risk management is such an important part. It's not just are you single sourced or do you have a financial concern of a supplier, but the risk management can really now also go end to end, and through modeling and being prescriptive, you can make sure that you're optimizing and you have the right bits or parts or skills, whatever your supply chain consists of, at the right place at the right time. If we could go to the next page, so with that is our 2020 vision. We've put a strategy together, and simply it's creating these smarter value chains. It's driving effectiveness. We already did the efficiency, so now it's really driving that effectiveness and enabling growth. This is all on a bed of talent. We think talent is a critical part of this, and making sure we're ready for 2020, and that in turn drives the client experience. I just kind of highlighted in yellow here the big plays that we call them that are really leading to that 2020. I talked about the transparent supply chain, smarter commerce. We want to make sure that we are, everything that we do now that we're end-to-end, if we have good hub inventory analytic programs, for example, with our suppliers, we want to do the same with our business partners going the other way. We are really driving for this social collaboration, so setting up these communities outside of our 4 walls so that everybody is driving and has transparent views of the same data, and then, of course, applying analytics. If we go to page 6, and I think I love the way you described the big data opportunity. One of the things I think about big data, and a lot of people you'll read about structured and unstructured data, but for a supply chain in a large enterprise like IBM, where it really helps us is, and we have a lot of legacy systems having gone through our centennial in 2011, is that we can take structured data, but structured data from different sources, and now using the analytic capabilities, we no longer have very expensive IT bridge systems that we have to put in place to have the data be compatible. We can actually pull the data in, and starting at the bottom of our, the analytics evolution, if you will, you can put dashboards in. You can start having them be alert-driven. We were able, within our supply chain in IBM, to reduce our metrics by over 50%. And one thing I'm very fond of is eliminated 17 hours of executive review time, because we're now letting these dashboards and analytics, if you will, drive our systems for us, not analysts putting together PowerPoints and having management reviews. Again, they're alert-driven, and then as you move up the chain, we start doing predictive modeling and making sure we're optimizing it. Then you can really go up and get prescriptive and start not only modeling, but having the systems themselves make recommendations on how we should optimize. And then where we'll get to, and it is a journey, but really to get to this cognitive stage where it's self-learning and, analytics themselves are very iterative. You get smarter each time you go, but it's really where that's going to start being able to, supply chains themselves become a value add to the company because you're driving to the bottom line. Go to page 7. These are the 3 examples I was going to show. The first one, just kind of quickly, is our quality early warning system. And what this is I think most people, if they're tied to manufacturing, are familiar with statistical process control. Well, this is a system that we've designed that actually within our own factories, and we have done proof of concepts with some clients, we're able to detect trends 6 weeks earlier than statistical process controls did. So, you know, really you're improving your quality and, of course, saving your bottom line by not having the warranty expenses later. The next one down, critical parts management. This was put in place to make sure, and it's our suppliers and their suppliers and actually their suppliers going backwards, putting a system in place to manage critical parts, know exactly where they are. You can see we started that in 2010 and we went all the way down, and if you look at the 2 blips on them in 2011, the first was the tragic Japan earthquake followed by the tsunami and power shortages. And then the next one over was the floods in Thailand that affected, for ourselves, the hard disk supply. So with this critical parts management system, we still, with the natural disasters, you know, were impacted, but we were able to quickly get them under control, and they weren't as the same magnitude before we had them. And then the last one, I just wanted to give an example of. It's not all supply chain related to a hardware or physical part manufacturing. We also, within our supply chain, have accounts receivable. So we have an advanced analytic program in place that helps us to find the next best action for cash collection, and we're able to do it at a much lower expense as well. So if I kind of wrap up back on page 8 with our future lady, you know, I really think it's this somehow connecting your suppliers, their suppliers, all the way through to your clients and partners. You do it in a very transparent fashion, highly collaborative, socially enabled. You apply the advanced analytics to really not only be able to allow you to be a descriptive alert-based system, you can do modeling, but have the analytics themselves get to a point where they are recommending actions for you to take to drive your outcome. And with all of this in place, of course, you can mitigate all of your risk management. So I don't know, as I said, we're working on our future lady, and I'd love to get input. I know it's not perfect yet, but I think it's at least a view of where we're heading in 2020, and I look forward to hearing any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you so much, Fran. First of all, I love the fact that, you know, it's not linear, and it really gets at some of the evolution of analytics. But, you know, you're a great leader of supply chain. What lessons learned can you share with the group? You know, I found that in my study of supply chain, often we fail forward. Any lessons learned to share?
Oh, yes, especially, let me focus on the analytic projects because and they might sound like simple lessons learned, but we really have 3 specific ones. One is you have to drive the right environment. There has to be a readiness for change. The leader tops down driving it, and then we always do what we call 3 in a box. So we'll have the deep analytic, the doctor in math, the person who just can't live without math every day. But also we'll have a transformation executive in the box. So that'd be the second in the box. And they really own setting up the processes, making sure you have the management system around it. And then the third is the line owner. So, whoever is the operations executive for the area of that project. Those 3 in a box, they're all needed to drive the change. The next one I would say is you also have to have incentive alignment. So you've got the processes, the management system, but you also have to put incentives, and if it's a analytic projects external to your company, actually put T's and C's, terms and conditions, in place that drives using that analytics. If you believe in it, then you should put it in your T's and C's and reward for using it. And then the third is, it's just an approach, but I think in the old days where you'd have an IT system and you install it, and there'd be some bugs and you wait for revision 1.1, 1.2. Analytics isn't that way at all. Analytics, starts small and it's very iterative. If you have some, perhaps seasoned supply chain analysts and they don't believe it to start with, and you don't have that right management system and you don't have the incentives lined up, they're not, they're going to say, that's wrong, or the data wasn't right to start with. But if you start small and it's iterative and the output is going to be a minimum, maximum, a range, and it gets better and it gets better and it gets tighter and tighter each time you go through, if you have that mindset in the beginning, then it's amazing that the momentum you gain, people love it. And, we within IBM also set up it's a small but a little fund that I control, and we have a community out there, and people can submit their analytic projects. They have to have the 3 in a box I mentioned, so the analytic person, a process management transformation expert, and a line person. But if they have those 3, it gets very competitive, and we'll fund those projects, and sometimes they turn into big projects. So I think if you don't have that approach, I think you'll find that the people that love math, they'll deploy the analytics, and the ones that don't will not adapt it.
I love your insight about how this is a whole different way of thinking, right? It's not like the large, massive ERP programs where we had to really work on debugging and evolution. I want to ask you another question, though, Fran, because, IBM's done so much work on talent. Any insights for the folks listening about building teams and getting ready for 2020 with the talents, the core group that's going to run these supply chains?
Yeah, I think it's such a critical part. We actually, starting with 2015, and then now we've extended it to 2020, we did an extensive piece of work that said these are the supply chain skills we're going to need. First, as I said, in 2015, and now we've extended it out. And we found that 3 out of 4, whenever I present to the team in IBM, I always say, including myself, 3 out of 4 of our jobs are going to change. And there were 4 skill areas that we were short on, and that I went ahead and announced that, if you will, deployed it out to the team last year so that we would have time to put our education plans in place. And of course, we provided all kinds of different training to get there. But one is analytics for the business user. We don't expect our teams to be the deep math experts, but we have courses that say, if you know what business outcome you're driving, what are your business problems you have today, understand analytics enough to know how that will help you solve those problems. T-shaped is a big one. I think the days of the old, you're just very vertically disciplined within a supply chain is just not going to be the skill that we need in 2015, 2020. Our systems themselves are going to be end-to-end, and so if we're only deep and not horizontal in our skill base, we're not going to be able to contribute. So T-shaped is a big one, or end-to-end supply chain skills. We want more client-facing skills. Because we're so deep in these analytics, IBM is actually helping our clients who have supply chains, and so our team is going in as subject matter experts, so we need client-facing skills. And then the 4th area, we actually have quite a few, but we need more project manager skills as we go forward. I think one, just to finish answering, but it's not just classroom training either. We do a lot of grapevines. We set up communities. We have knowledge ambassadors. We'll do shadow programs. Our CEO, Ginny Rometty, this year announced that all IBMers We'll have the 40 hours of training, think 40, so we're all out there putting our own plans in place. But again, it's creative learning. Attending this webinar would certainly count as an hour of our own educational plans.
Well, I'm glad I could help you out my own way. Thanks. Let's shift gears to Colgate, and I'll come back and ask you some questions in a minute. Thank you so much, Fran. Great insight. Okay, let's shift gears, and if you want to follow Fran on Twitter, here is her contact information, and I appreciate all those insights. And now let's talk, Neil, about Colgate. It's a different perspective, and Neil, you're a category supply chain leader. What do you do as a category supply chain leader?
We've broken our company into really 4 major categories, and as a category supply chain leader, we align exactly kind of with our 4 core business focuses, and therefore I, as a leader of that function or my function, we get involved at the front end of innovation, of development, and of course then more of our what our core function would be: source, make, deliver. But we also certainly follow it through to not only the shelf in terms of selling, but the shelf in terms of restocking. So each one of our categories is aligned, I'll say, exactly with our commercial folks relative to business development, relative to marketing, relative to sales. So the reason we've organized in that manner, what we call category supply chains, is to align with the business in a really a seamless fashion.
Well, tell me a little bit about Colgate, Neil. I'm going to shift gears here, and let's go through your vision of 2020. What's it look like for you?
As you say, let me say just a little bit about the company to put it into context. You can see here on the slide we're about $17 billion in sales, just consumer products company. I'll name those 4 focus areas at the bottom of the slide. Been around a really long time, so we've got to celebrate a couple hundred years here a few years back at this point. A relatively good-sized supply chain with 22,000 people and operating. We sell products in nearly everywhere in the world and manufacture in 32 of those. Our 4 focus areas, which I talked about, are oral care, personal care, pet nutrition, and home care. And in fact, we absolutely have organized our supply chains in that manner, and I have one of those category supply chains as part of my roles and responsibilities. So in terms of how I see 2020, I think the big word is probably the complexities will continue to increase, and probably more than just linearly, they will increase very rapidly. The supplier and customer collaboration will become absolutely mandatory. We see that we are making some progress in this area for sure over the last, I would say, 10, 12 years, to be perfectly honest, but there is much more room to grow in that area and become more effective. We certainly see as that helps us in terms of cycle time, but what we've really seen out of that collaboration is not only better customer service, but increasingly lower costs coming from that collaboration, where ideas are identified that were not intended to be cost savings, but as we've streamlined, been able to make savings out of that. And then, of course, integration with the digital world that has just been talked about is going to be really critical. Demand sensing on the Internet of Everything, on the shop floor, you name it, integration with that digital world is a real complexity and challenge that's in front of us. We feel like we're just starting to scratch the surface. We do have a roadmap that we have put together. definitely feel like, though, I would call it a fuzzy roadmap. In other words, we get 2 or 3 years out and it starts to look a little fuzzy on purpose because we want to be able to adapt and change as we go forward. And then responsiveness, flexibility, and reliability are really going to be kind of fundamental for the supply chain, for that, what I call the middle portion of that end-to-end, the source, make, and deliver. It definitely is going to be a fundamental part of that. And cost, service, and quality now, and for many years, have been assumed. We need to be able to lower costs. We have to have perfect service, and quality has to be a given at this point. So if I can, I in fact would like to talk about some of those complexities relative to one of your slides coming out of your book. If we'd go to that next slide, if you would, please, in terms of the evolution of the supply chain. Certainly, all of these components will have to work, and we are working on each one of those. But I'd kind of like to highlight 4 of them that you see there. And the first one is really the alignment with the commercial partners, customers, and suppliers. Again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, what we have found really in search of trying to get our cycle times down, get our inventories down, what we've found is not only by collaborating more closely with our suppliers and the people that we supply, every time we've made some success in that area, we've found that we've also been able to generate some cost savings out of that particular piece. It's definitely a challenge to continue to collaborate even closer and more seamlessly, but feel like we're making good progress, and that for sure is one of the pillars that we have. In terms of what's on this slide called orchestrating demand and supply, we have started now, let me think, probably 3 to 4 years ago, and formally have named the program for us Synchronizing Demand and Supply. And again, our first thought of that was all about being responsive to the marketplace relative to getting what products they need at the right time, and to be able to do so by lowering our inventories and having what we need at the right place at the right time. And this orchestrating demand and supply, or synchronizing demand and supply, we've started out by again a rather long, we see it as a continual journey, but in terms of being able to see rewards relative to our KPIs, starting to see those now. We started with a roadmap that included a much better end-to-end look of all of our processes, and then starting to develop centers of excellence around each one of those processes, and having a center of excellence, a home for that center of excellence. Sometimes that may be in our headquarters in New York. Sometimes it may be out in the field in a particular location. It really doesn't matter. But having that center of excellence that then defines how we are going to accomplish that particular process, what is the best practice out there, improving on the best practice, and more importantly, getting that spread throughout all of the entire supply chain, and in many cases into the business teams, to be able to truly start synchronizing that demand and supply. So we've seen a great outcome of not only the synchronizing, being able to lower our inventories, but another piece of what we've gotten out of that is we continue to see simplification opportunities in dealing with our partners more closely, and we've actually driven a lot of simplification opportunities out of that and simplified our portfolio, driving SKU productivity to new realms that we did not even have on our horizon not too long ago. Shaping demand and supply based on market is another, we've got a different acronym for it. We call it Colgate Business Process or Planning. And the reason that I want to bring that up is to just highlight the fact that it is absolutely a business process. Cross-functional. You could say it's the old sales operations types meetings taken to a great, multiplied by a factor of 4 relative to what happens in those meetings relative to driving business performance, and then what will be the requirements from a supply chain standpoint. And then another box that I want to highlight is really the efficiency box. As you had mentioned really in the opening, we like to believe that we've been able to continue to improve our margins over a very, very long period of time. Over the last 20 years, we've seen a significant improvement in margin, and that's really all fundamentally built out of a program that we call Funding the Growth, or FTG is the acronym for that. And if you fast forward to the next slide, one back, please.
Okay, give me just 1 second. There we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
There we go. This program, I would like to say I know how long this program has existed. As Funding the Growth, it's probably been around 20 years, but in reality, as the name Funding the Growth. But prior to that, we've had other programs with different names. So it's a very long-standing program. One of Colgate's core values. We have 3 core values. One of our core values is continuous improvement, and this really is part of our continuous improvement program for the company from a dollar standpoint, from a cost standpoint. There are many other continuous improvement programs that drive this company, but that particularly is one. This program is very, very core to the supply chain, but also very, very core to the rest of the company. I think I am inaccurate in telling you that at every company meeting or webcast or event, and I know at every business review, our CEO always talks about funding the growth and how important that is. And why is it important? He wants to use those monies. We want to use those funding the growth monies to plow back into our business through advertising, promotion, and or other mechanism, even funding more R&D to drive the top line of the company. So we don't see it as necessarily a way to help our bottom line as much as we see it as a way to drive our top line. And this little wheel on there you will see actually has been developed by our finance function, and it one of the on the outer rim you'll see e-savings database. That e-savings database is incredibly large after the number of years that we've been at it, as well as the number of projects that are entered into that. And you'll see on the slide there that over 5,000 savings projects happen each year. All of those go in the e-savings database. Going back to how we're organized, they're all organized by category, and they're also then sub-organized such that you can mine this database. If I'm in one supply chain, another category supply chain, I can mine this database to come up with ideas that will deliver in another category. Our marketing, our sales folks, our logistics folks, every single function contributes to this, and it has been really one of the keys to the success that even in our annual report you'll see something about funding the growth program being talked about. and as the last bullet talks about there, over the last 20 years, we've really doubled if we measure our savings as a percent of sales, is doubled over the last 7 years, reaching some pretty incredible numbers that we can be proud of. So it actually is part of the culture. From the day you enter the company, you understand it, and what's nice about it is that you know, as you're delivering those funding the growth savings, those get to go back to help drive the top line, and there's almost nothing more motivating for people in a company but to have that those monies driving the top line. So. If I can, I think that probably talks about what I see in terms of the vision for 2020 relative to how Colgate operates. This particular slide talks about KPIs and very recently, to help drive the performance of the company and particularly the supply chain, we have looked at our KPIs and we've reassessed how we are looking at those and refreshed them with what we would consider a new and simple hierarchy, aligning with the business goals relative to profitable growth. At the top of this pyramid is the key for this. So the supply chain goals need to be such that we can see profitable growth coming out of the company, or all of those many metrics that all supply chains measure kind of mean nothing if they are not able to drive profitable growth. In terms of supporting those in terms of for profitable growth, you've always got service and cost that you can somewhat say balance against that profitable growth. And then to improve those, back to flexibility, reliable, and responsive, our supply chain, we have measurements around those parameters, as well as, of course, product quality and our sustainability for the company. We actually have KPIs underneath all of those in all of those categories, and enabling those are all of our systems and our processes throughout the company. That the list would get too long probably to talk about at this point in time.
Okay. So let's back up there, Neil, and talk about a few things. You know, if we think about Colgate and 2020, what do you think your greatest challenge is going to be?
Great question. I would say that I see probably 3 or 4. One of them is cycle time pressures that will come either from the customer or the consumer, however you want to look at it. We see, and again, as I explained, our categories, we are clear up front in the innovation and developing stage. So I feel like we get to get very close to our customers, and as you know, customers are helping to drive our innovation as well. And what we see is people wanting faster and faster new product developments, faster and faster delivery of the new items to the marketplace. So cycle time pressures are, in my opinion, one of the major challenges. Another one, given the business that we're in, I think customization of the products for either, again, the customer or the consumer is something that faces a consumer goods manufacturer such as ourselves. How to do that efficiently and effectively, you know, of course, if I look back in time, simplification is something every supply chain executive probably wanted to drive to help them drive costs, and certainly we want to make sure that we have the right portfolios from a simplification standpoint. But in terms of what the customers are demanding is more and more customization. So we need to figure out how to get excellent at mass customization, I would call it. And then volatility of commodities, materials, raw materials, I think is a real problem that we have faced. I think most of us faced over the last few years, but I think it will become more and more as the global demand grows, and can all of the suppliers keep up with that. And then the last one, I think, challenge I would see is more the systems dependency. I mean, the whole idea of we have to have systems to be able to react in the correct, fast response way, but learning those and understanding them and keeping them up with the current capabilities that are available is probably a challenge that I see. That you know, if I look back a few years, systems were always changing, but we seem to be able to keep up. Now the pace is even faster, and I think that's a big challenge for us.
Well, and, you know, we've got a lot of people, Neil, on the phone that are people that provide consulting services or technologies. You know, what advice would you have for them? What 3 things do you need?
Good question. Well, from, let's say, start with maybe consulting partners. I think it's professionals, experienced professionals that can bring forward the latest and best practices that are out there. We try to stay external, but recognize again with the pace, it's difficult to do. So experienced professionals that understand those best practices and can bring them to life, help us bring them to life is one. In terms of technology providers, I would really talk about visibility, real analytics, really some of the things that Fran talked about, real solutions. Maybe all of us probably recognize that there are solutions out there for everything. It's a matter of how can I get the ones that provide real solutions and kind of get beyond the hype, but get to the real solutions, and that predictive nature of the analytics. And then finally, from an academic standpoint, I'm really, because we need these real solutions and real problems solved, it's preparing the talent for what, at least the way we look at it, this end-to-end supply chain. I no longer, so to speak, I think we've gone way beyond needing only people that know how to make or deliver. We certainly need those people that can go across that entire end-to-end supply chain to really be able to optimize all of those processes to deliver the best solution. And I think from an academic standpoint, from the school standpoint, that's what we're looking to bring in.
Awesome. Well, Fran, let me bring you back in here. Any closing advice for a supply chain leader out there? Any one piece of advice that you have?
You know, I just think we're at such a pivotal point in you know, supply chains and you know, I think as Neil just described and in IBM's view, we're at this point where we're going to change as much going forward as we had in the last 30 years. And that I really think that people need to be ready. You know, if we keep, you know, our vertical lanes, if you will, and deep expertise and not start looking at it end to end and how to tap into, you know, making use of the data that we have and the advanced analytics, the social collaboration, the speed that brings, that people will be left behind, you know, and that's why I just love it so much. In that, you know, I think it's you know, it's a brand new frontier almost, and you can just little things, you know, improve your inventory turns by 10x by just being able to tap onto that data, or your quality, or, you know, whatever business outcome you're driving. So, you know, I guess my advice to supply chain leaders is, you know, get out there, read what's going on, find out, start small, but think big.
Well, I think that's awesome. You know, and you talk a lot about advanced analytics, Fran. You know, what does advanced analytics mean to you?
I think because, you know, analytics, it's like, you know, people, maybe statistics is the old term, and it's kind of not very sexy. So you say analytics, and all of a sudden, like, oh, well, it's you know, it's doing something with the numbers. But I think advanced analytics is where you really start letting the systems do that iterative calculations and give you that the modeling, the predictive nature, and you can, you know, when you are able to take advantage of that, you know, for example, if you can find quality problems 6 weeks earlier in your process, wouldn't you, if you were an automotive or an airline or anybody, you know, in those industries, that is mega dollars. If you can collect cash that much faster with less resources, and then, you know, your corporation can use that cash to do acquisitions or whatever. So I think it's, you know, advanced analytics is getting up into that prescriptive, even cognitive, and truly driving to your company's bottom line. You know, supply chains aren't just a service, they're actually a value add.
Right. Thank you so much, Fran. All right, so Neil, last question for you. What piece of advice would you have to supply chain leaders on the phone? What one piece of closing advice?
I think it's all around that future talent pipeline. How you can develop it. I think we're going to have to rely on ourselves. It sounds kind of crazy, but I think we're going to have to rely on ourselves to really build the talents that we need for the future. I think it's as we've said on this call, it's much becoming more and more difficult to get those people out of universities or off the street, so to speak. I think developing processes, plans around developing the talent is something I know we are doing well. We are doing a lot of. We think we're doing pretty well, but it's something that part of that continuous improvement, we continue to look at it and push for it, because we know that for sure the people in this organization are what are delivering the results, and those people need to be so much differently skilled than what they needed to be even 10 years ago, let alone 25 or 30 years ago. So that my advice would be develop your own programs to get those people ready for 2020, and I think that'll serve us well.
Well, thank you, Fran, and thank you, Neil. We appreciate it. And this is Lora Cecere signing off for Supply Chain Insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.